Well, hello everyone. Dan Turbyville, and this is Powerhouse Fence Show. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you being here. So this week we're gonna talk about some mistakes and mistakes that bleed profit from our jobs and from our business. I'll share a few stories of mistakes that we've made, what we did wrong, and how I think we could have done something better or different to prevent those mistakes that happen. So that's what we're doing today. The show is presented by Memphis Fence Company and Simpalo. We have some partners, the Thornton Fence Consulting Group. So if you're looking to hire someone to do some consulting for your fence company, you can give Tony and his team a call. They do host events throughout the course of the year. And so be on the lookout for those too. Fence News, fence industry publication. They're good people. They put out a good publication and we like them. And we put their stuff on our banner up top. And same thing goes with EZG Manufacturing. They make the big orange machines. Man, sorry, I'm struggling. Like the fence hog and things like that. You've probably seen them at trade shows or on social media. Again, we like their stuff. We put their name on here just because we use it and we like it. And they allowed us. So there we go. We are live. There's a phone number on the bottom of the screen, 901-878-4987. If anyone wants to call during the show or any other time, feel free to use that phone number to get directly to me. As always, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day, your commute, or whatever that may be to listen to me ramble on about whatever I'm talking about this week. I do appreciate it. We do it for you. If anybody wants to hear anything specific, if you want me to try to track down any guests to be on the show, anything at all, feel free to drop a comment, give me a call, whatever you want to do, and we'll do our best to make that happen. We are still running our Make a Wish fundraiser. I guess it's just indefinite. The link is in the description above. We actually, if in case you missed it, we did fund a wish ourselves, and what we were trying to do is do a fundraiser to help raise money for an additional wish. And so we did ours. I don't know, it's been a couple months ago now, and I think they're still trying to like match us up with a family because we are going to try to do a wish celebration, and so kind of have a little get together and meet the child and the family that are having their wish granted. And so all of that stuff is still kind of pending, but nonetheless, we did fund a wish ourselves. So last week, I mentioned that something tragic had happened to our Memphis Fence family. And I didn't want to go too far because it was pretty recent and, it hadn't really been announced and hadn't really gotten out too much. So this week, I'll just let you know what that was. Sorry to bring up bad things, right? But I think it's important. So we lost one of our crew leaders. His name was Josh. He was a relatively young man. He was married. He had 3 kids, and he had been a member of our team for about 15 years now. And he, yeah, so it wasn't a work related injury or anything like that. It was some other stuff, but anyway, we lost a member of our team, and that really sucks. That's that, yeah, it sucks, right? And so keep his family in your prayers and in your thoughts. And there is a link in the description as well to a GoFundMe that was set up for his family. So if anyone wants to make a contribution to that and try to help them as they navigate through these difficult times, feel free to do that. It really kind of made me realize that, I mean, life is short, right? And it just, it didn't make me realize it, but I guess it kind of just brought it back to front and center for me. And life is short, and none of us are guaranteed our next breath. And I heard a quote from Steve Jobs this morning, and the quote was something like, think of your life as a rainbow arcing across the horizon of the world. You appear, you have a chance to blaze in the sky, and then you disappear. So I think that's a pretty powerful quote to me, right? You only have one chance to go blaze in the sky. So I think we've got to make the most of it as we go through. And with that, I will move on and talk about the topic of the show. So I know it's super earth shattering, it's mind bending, it is unheard of, but mistakes will bleed the profits from your job and from your business. We all make mistakes and we all have to fix them. We don't want to, right? We don't want to just fix the problem and move on. What we want to do is we want to learn and we want to figure out what led us there. What did we do wrong that led us to make this mistake? And what could we have done differently? And what are we going to do different next time? So last week we talked about systems and processes and stuff like that versus just pure chaos, right? And so kind of along those same lines, that all ties into wanting to improve, wanting to be better, wanting to prevent mistakes and deliver a better experience for our customer and deliver a better product for our customer because ultimately my opinion of it is we're delivering an experience to our customer. And I think that is the biggest thing that they're going to remember. Now, within reason, right? If you go out and put up the biggest piece of junk fence the world's ever seen, well, don't expect your customer to actually love it. But as long as it is a quality product, what they're going to remember is the experience. I shared a story about having some work done at my house and how the experience of that work completely overshadowed the quality of the work. And so what they had done was fine, but the experience and the mess that they left behind, which wasn't a mess like what just popped into my mind, right? It wasn't like they left a trailer load of trash in the yard, but it wasn't done well enough, right? It wasn't cleaned enough. And again, that just kind of overshadowed the whole experience of having these guys come and do some work at the house. So I think it's important that we remember that we're not just trying to deliver a fence, right? We're trying to deliver an entire experience of having the fence installed. Anyway, we make mistakes. What causes mistakes? All right. Well, sometimes it's just a plain old accident, and sometimes things happen. But a lot of times, maybe even most of the time, it's a lack of training or maybe a lack of experience or knowledge or communication. And all of these things start at the top. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, like like these stories from history, right? So we're going to start with one of those. And it's one that we probably all can remember and we're probably all at least somewhat familiar with, which was the Deepwater Horizon. So BP leased this rig. I don't exactly know the details of how that relationship works, right? So I don't know. I just know they leased it. And I know they were drilling 5,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. They were behind schedule, right? Sound familiar? Behind schedule. And the cost were $1 million a day that they were incurring while they were behind schedule. So Halliburton was involved in this and I guess engineered or designed or did some sort of calculations and told them that they need 21 centralizers to keep the drill casing aligned with the borehole. I don't know anything about that stuff, right? But they needed 21 of them to do something, keep it all in line. BP decided that 6 was good enough. They're like, yeah, we need 21, but we think 6 will do. That's crazy, right? It's not like they said 19 will do. They decided 6 was enough. And they were supposed to do a cement bond log test to verify the integrity of the seal down there, 5,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. They skipped it. It saved them 12 hours, right? Only 12 hours, and they skipped it. So there was a negative pressure test that happened at some point, and it showed abnormal pressure readings. So BP and Transocean, who I guess BP had leased the rig from, uh, both of their supervisors misinterpreted the results and kind of just brushed them off, and they kept going. I don't. Yeah, they were just like, that's weird, but let's just keep going. And so they were actually in the process of temporarily sealing the well to move the rig. And I assume what that means is one rig comes in to drill and then they bring another in to pump, maybe. Again, I don't know a lot of details about how that whole system works, but I do know they were in the process of temporarily sealing the well to move the rig. It says safety barriers and mud pressure levels were reduced too quickly, which allowed the gas to surge upward. And what happened was on April 20th, 2010, natural gas shot up the well, reached the rig, and ignited. So instantly, 11 workers that were on board were killed. And then the rig burned for 2 days before it sank. So there was a blowout preventer, like a fail safe that didn't properly activate. And for the net when all of this happened, that device didn't properly activate, so it didn't close off the hole. And for 87 days, 134 million gallons of oil spilled into the Gulf. All right, so there was obviously multiple mistakes, right? They cut corners. So instead of putting in 21 centralizers, they decided 6 would work, and they put those in. And they skipped the cement bond log test to save 12 hours. And, so like I said, cut corners, uh, the abnormal pressure readings, right, on the negative pressure test. So maybe that was a result of a lack of training. Maybe they didn't understand fully what they were looking at. Maybe they thought it was a glitch. But as a result, BP faced criminal charges, billions of dollars in cleanup fees. Their fines, settlements, and damages were $60 billion. And their name became synonymous with corporate negligence. Now, that's a drastic example, right? But it is an example. And it is a time when people cut corners, they rush through things, they got done, well, and there was catastrophic results. So that happens to us sometimes, right? Us as humans or us as fence professionals, it happens to us. We get behind schedule, maybe we get over budget, we get in some sort of a bind, and we might be tempted to cut corners or to make something work that isn't quite right, whatever it is, to get the job done quicker, to try to stop the bleeding. And sometimes we might get away with it. But what happens when we don't, right? We have a failure. I mean, worst case scenario, a fence falls over, gate falls over, something like that, and it results in some sort of loss, property, or an injury or something along those lines, right? That's to me, that's worst case scenario. But sometimes we might just get called by an inspector or the general contractor or whatever customer hired us. Like, they might notice that something we did is not what it was supposed to be and call us out on it. And so when that happens, now does our name become synonymous with negligence as a result of being caught by our customer? Right? Probably in their mind it does. And that probably is delivering that experience that I talked about earlier at my house, where even if the job got installed and we did it on time, like, there's still that massive overshadowing issue that we didn't do something right. We got in a rush, we cut corners, we made something work that wasn't supposed to, whatever that is. So I can tell a few stories about this. In fact, I could tell a lot of stories about it. So I'm just going to narrow it down. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. Well, first of all, I want to tell you a story that's not even related to this stuff. It's just something interesting to me. So we sold a press. It's a big, I think 135 ton. It's like a 12-foot wide machine, probably 10 foot tall, something like that. And this thing weighs 30,000 pounds. We sold it. And the guy who bought it is coming over here tomorrow to move it out of the building. And he's going to pick it up and put it on like these little skates. It's his. He's already bought it. I said, it's as is, where is, you're responsible for getting it out of the building kind of deal. And so he calls today and tells us his plan and says he's coming to try to get it out tomorrow. And I'm really curious to see how this goes. I'm not an expert. I've never moved heavy machinery. I was here. I was a child when that thing was put in the building, but I can remember watching them do it, and it was not done the way that is going to happen tomorrow. And so, anyway, I'm really curious to see how that goes. Maybe it works out for him. Maybe it's an acceptable way of moving this equipment. I don't know, but to me, it kind of seems like cutting corners and trying to reduce the cost and trying to just hurry up and get it done instead of hiring someone or renting a piece of equipment to do it properly or anything along those lines. Seems like a way to just rush and get it done. But if anything crazy happens, we'll report back. In fact, if it goes over flawlessly, I'll try to let you know about that too. But it's interesting. So, job number 1, I'm going to tell you a story about. I think we've probably told this story on here before, and we did a job. We had to build and install 2 aluminum slide gates. The reason I'm talking about this again is because it came up in a conversation earlier today, and I thought that's a good story for this topic. So we had to build and install these 2 aluminum slide gates, and it was part of a bigger project. And we wound up, hold on, I have to have a tea break. So we wind up in that spot a lot. I don't want to say a lot. I don't want to make it sound like we don't know what we're doing or anything like that. But we do wind up in that spot from time to time where we have to hurry, right? It's rush. Let's get it done. And we don't want to be late. We don't want to be the ones holding up a project. We don't want to be the ones making the job go past its scheduled substantial completion date or anything like that. So we want to get it done. So we built these 2 gates, we installed them, everything went fine. The automation was installed, it was connected, all of that stuff worked out just fine. So within a few months, we started getting phone calls about the gates having some issues. And we went up there and we checked it out. And the gates had bowed like a lot. And they were bowed to the point where they were like hitting the fence next to them and hitting the curb. And, they were just way out of whack and they were not working. So what did we do? Well, we went out there and we tried to patch them by putting a band-aid on them. Now the band-aid was it was an educated risk. Okay. I understood that what we were doing may or may not work. And but I was confident that if we put it on there and it worked right and everything went well, then the gate wasn't going to fail because of what we did, right? It wasn't like it was going to fall apart. And what we did cost money. It wasn't like we went up there and spent 2 hours working on the gates and said, "Okay, here you go." Like, no, we had to buy material, fabricate pieces, have them coated, all of this stuff, and go install it. And so we basically reinforced the entire gate by adding additional material to it. And so this job site, we're like, well, maybe it just gets a lot of wind, right? Because we've had those scenarios in the past where we installed gates and then we figure out by some kind of weird thing that there's a ton of wind load on these gates, more so than what it would be in a normal scenario. Sometimes it's because of the orientation of the building and the relationship of the building to the gates, and the building will like funnel a bunch of wind around and push it through the gates. So we've been in those scenarios before, and when we did this reinforcement stuff, everything was okay. When we did it before, the gates were not quite as bowed as what these were, just to be honest with you. But again, it was an educated risk, right? And so we did that. And it actually turned out okay. Wasn't great, and it was kind of a okay type thing, right? And we said, well, let's see how what happens. Let's see what this does. Was kind of our approach to it, and it just didn't do what it needed to do. And so, we checked it out after a week or two and kind of looked at what was going on and how the gate had moved and all this stuff after we reinforced it. And I said, no, 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 we're not doing this. Like, we're not going to leave this thing here. It's not right. It's not as good as it should be. And so we wound up saying, no, we're going to replace these gates. And this process, like I said, when we reinforced it, we had to do fabrication and buy materials and have them coated and all of that, right? So that's weeks to get all of those steps done and then to get them installed. And so now whenever we go back to the customer and we say, "Okay, that didn't work. We're going to just replace the gates." And to build gates, it's going to take some weeks again to get that done. And it just doesn't look good. Right. I think the customer appreciated the fact that we stood behind it, we showed up, we made it right, but it didn't look good. And so it probably caused a little bit of damage with our relationship with that contractor, maybe. I mean, it's embarrassing for me, if nothing else. And I don't like to be embarrassed by the work that we do. So anyway, we wound up and we rebuilt the gates. And between those 2 gates, it was about a $45,000 mistake. But we got them replaced, and everything is working fine to this day, as knock on wood, as far as I know. So the new gates are installed, and we're able throughout the process, we're immediately investigating. Okay, we're not just accepting that the gates are messed up. We're not just accepting that there's a problem. We're trying to figure out what caused that problem, what's going on, what can we do to prevent it, what can we do to fix it. All of these thoughts and conversations are happening, right? And so when you build an aluminum gate, you have to do everything right. You're not just sticking a bunch of parts together and hoping for the best, right? I mean, we've seen people do this over and over again here in our local markets, and you can't just slap a gate together. Whether it's a cantilever gate, a swing gate, aluminum slide gate, whatever they are, they have varying levels of intricacies, difficulties, things like that that come along with them, but you can't just throw them together. You got to do it the right way. And so it turns out that there's some method to the fabrication, right? And these gates are about 50 foot long. They have to be built in multiple pieces to be coated. So we don't have access to anyone that has a 50-foot long powder coat system. And so we build them in multiple parts and they go through, they're coated, and then we take them to the job site, we assemble them on site, and then we install them. And we've done it time and time again, 100 times, right? And so it might sound crazy. I promise it works if you do it the right way. So what happened on these 2 gates is the joints were not put in the right place. You got to be really careful. You can't have all the joints line up. So you can't have your joints for your gate and your track and all of that stuff in the same place. And if you do, the gate is not going to work. So there's a method that we use to determine where these joints go and where those joints go. And that method was not followed properly on those gates. And that's what led to the failure. And so we investigate more and more and more, right? Because we want to know, how can we prevent this? And so we go back and we start digging into all the paperwork that was given to the shop and everything else. And the fabricators we had in the shop, they were good at their jobs, but they were not experienced in building these gates. There were CAD drawings that were made of the gates. They showed all the parts and pieces, they showed the sizes of everything, they showed the weights of it all. But guess what? They didn't show the joints. So nobody had specified where the joints have to be for this thing to work. They even had part numbers on it, right? So when we make shop drawings, we really make Most of the time, the submittal process is also when we make shop drawings, but, um, even for these gates, like, the posts were set, measurements were pulled, drawings were made of the exact gate after the posts were set, and so, like I said, all the part numbers were on there, sizes, weights, everything, but it didn't have the joints. I have to drink some more tea, I'm sorry. I've been fighting sinus problems, and makes it a little bit more challenging to just sit here and monologue for a while. In fact, this show is probably going to be a little bit shorter than normal just because I don't feel like sitting here talking for an hour, but I want to deliver something to you guys. All right. So the CAD drawings were done. The fabricators were good. They were not experienced. The CAD drawings were done. They were missing details. There was oversight in the shop. And what I mean by that is we had managers who were experienced in building these gates who were around the shop periodically all the time, not just specifically for this job, but all the time. Now, again, we're kind of in a rush. We have multiple things going on. This thing's being built. These gates are being built. Some fences being built, multiple stuff happening. And so they were there, but nobody ever checked this one little detail. And so we had multiple failures ourselves. And the same as the story that we told, or the story that I told, right, about Deepwater Horizon, there were multiple failures. Well, we had multiple failures, but none of ours were intentional, right? They were all just mistakes, and it was just compounding mistakes that wound up resulting in one big one that, like I said, was about a $45,000 problem. So, what could we have done differently? Well, we probably could have spent a little bit more time with the fabricators and walked them through this process a little bit better than what we did. Again, they were good, but they were not experienced in that world. So, we could have trained them a little bit better, right? So, there's a lack of training. We could have delivered more detail to them, right? So there's a lack of communication, and we could have specifically told them exactly where we wanted all the joints and the parts and everything to come together, which we failed to do. It should have been on the drawings. It wasn't. We could have noticed, right? We could have walked by and thought about, wait a minute, let me make sure these joints are lining up properly, right? Never happened. And so it was just it was a combination of a lot of unfortunate events that happened all simultaneously, and it led to a problem. It was a hard lesson. It was a lesson learned. We owned the problem though. Okay, we didn't try to run from it. We didn't try to ask for any additional money. We didn't ask for change orders. We didn't say, "Well, it's because of the weather. It's because this happened. It's because that happened." We didn't try to come up with excuses or anything else because we knew that we made the mistake. We knew it was our fault. And so we owned it and we fixed it and we moved on. And we've made drawings of aluminum gates since then. And the last time that I personally made one, fixed these problems, right? And so on it, it showed exactly where the joints for everything should line up. And that gate went in fine, had no problems until someone drove through it and then wrapped it around the post. And at that point, it didn't matter where the joints were. But the gate did not break even when it got wrapped probably to 160 degrees around the gate post. It didn't break. So we did that one right. I always try to explain to people within our organization, one of the things is the earlier we catch a mistake, the cheaper it is to fix it. Okay. So if you catch a mistake on a drawing before it ever goes in the shop and anything ever happens, guess what? That's a pretty simple fix. If you cut material and then realize there's a problem, yeah, you're out material, but it's a lot better than being out an entire gate that's coded and installed and has automation connected and all of that stuff, right? And so if we had noticed the gate was built wrong in the shop, maybe we could have fixed it. I don't know. Aluminum's a little finicky. It may have been something we could fix. It may have been something that we would have had to just scrap the gate and start over. But either way, it would have been a lot cheaper than having finished it, coated it, installed it, done all of that stuff. And yeah, it would have been delayed, but making a phone call and saying, "Hey, we realized we made a mistake when we were building your gates. We're going to have to back up and restart. It's going to push us back a week." They're going to be mad, right? But at the same time, I think they're going to respect the fact that you stood up and you owned your problem and you said, "Hey, we're going to fix this and we're going to do it the right way. We're not bringing these gates to the job site." And I will do that in a second. I am not afraid to call somebody and say, "Hey, this stuff is not up to our standard and we're going to fix it." Maybe you've heard my story of us replacing a gate that we installed. Man, it was at least a year after it was done. I I just so happened to be looking through one of our shared photo albums or something like that, and I saw a picture of this gate, and I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Surely we didn't install this thing. Structurally, it was fine. It functioned fine. There wasn't any kind of problem like that. It just aesthetically, it was ugly, and I didn't like it. It wasn't what we do." And so I said, "All right, we're going to build it again." And again, it had been installed for at least a year. And we called up the customer and we said, "Hey, we're going to come out and replace your gate." And they're like, "What? Why? It's fine. It's working just fine." Yeah, well, it might be working, but it doesn't look right. Right? It's not what we want it to be. So that's what we did. Anyway, here's another job. And this time also is related to gates. And we just installed the wrong gates altogether. I'll tell you, we did a job probably last year, and the crew took the work order, went, loaded up material, went out, set all the post, and the customer calls and says, "Hey, I was just wondering, how are you going to coat these posts black?" It was a chain link job. Do what? Yeah, the posts are supposed to be black. No, no, no. These posts out here are not black. And so what happened was the crew loaded galvanized posts and went and set them instead of the black vinyl coated posts that we had. And so in that one, it was on the work order. All the information was there. The material was ordered. It was sitting on the yard, and the crew grabbed the wrong stuff and didn't pay enough attention to the work order to see that it was supposed to be black. What do you do? I don't know. We, I mean, same thing. We owned it, we fixed it, and we move on. But that's the challenging one, right? Is that the information was there. So we didn't really make the mistake of failing all of the other things that we've talked about. The mistake then was on the person that read the work order and just conveniently skipped some of the words on there and set the wrong post. And that happens too. Tea break again. Sorry. All right. So the second job that I was going to tell you a story about, and then I accidentally included a few more in there, but this time we installed the wrong gates altogether. So this was another chain link job. We had the contract done, we had the submittals done, we had the locates called in, we had coordinated things with contractor. All of those steps were done right. We go out there and the crew starts installing the job and they install the whole thing and it's done. And then they go out, and I believe it happened when an architect or designer, whoever that was, went out to do, kind of like a check on the job and see how things are going. I don't know that they made it to the point where they were making a punch list, but it was something along those lines, right? And they call and they say, "Hey, um, I don't think these gates are right. What are you talking about?" Well, turns out that we installed like steel pipe cantilever gates where aluminum slide gates or aluminum cantilever gates were supposed to be. Whoops, right hole, wrong gate. And we said, "Oh, sorry." And again, we start doing investigating, right? What happened? So we looked, the job indeed was bid with aluminum gates, but the work order just said cantilever gates. So that one word, aluminum, meant that we built three cantilever gates and put them on this job site that we didn't have to build. And it delayed us in the project, right? Because at that point we go, "Oh crap, now we have to build these aluminum gates." The submittals that we had done for the job were not included with the work order. And I think that was a big mistake is that we didn't include the submittals with the work order, which is normally, we have these little work order forms and they work, but sometimes there's just too much information to try to put on a single piece of paper. And that's where I think it's important for us to include submittals, especially when we have multiple things going on a job site. Like we got to include that whole package. I don't know, within the last month or something like that, I kind of beat on that a little bit in one of these episodes, but we got to include the whole package. And so once again, we owned the problem. We built the aluminum gates. We went out, we took down the cantilever gates, and we installed the aluminum gates. And fortunately, we were able to use those steel pipe cantilever gates on other jobs. I believe they were here for maybe a year or two before we found them a new home. So it did take some time for us to get them installed somewhere else. Uh, I think we probably looked like amateur hour to the customer, and we fixed the problem, but it also delayed us completing that job for several weeks while we got the right gates built and got the right gates installed. So again, I think the simple solution to that would have been making sure that word aluminum was included on that work order, or or both, actually, and not or, and include the submittals. So again, a lesson learned, right? And that's what we do now. We include the submittals whenever when we prepare a work order. And we try to give the installers as much information as humanly possible. We try to communicate as effectively as we can, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's a lot of stuff going on most of the time, and we all make mistakes. We leave little details out like that. One of the things I struggle with is understanding that the person that I'm communicating with, whether that's verbally or by handing them a stack of paper or an email or whatever, I struggle a little bit to remember that other people don't know what I know, if that makes sense. And so a lot of the stuff that I take for granted, I'm just like, oh yeah, here, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you, like, here's these other 27 details that are relevant that I know and I've known for the past 2 years, but I forgot to tell you. So we have to move fast enough to be efficient, right? And again, we have to be able to serve our customers not just with the product that we install, but with the entire experience. So the stories that I've told, we're not delivering the level of experience that I expect of us. And to me, that's a that's a hard thing for me to deal with. It's not, yeah, it sucks that it costs money, right? All of this stuff costs resources. It costs money, it costs time, it delays that job, it delays other jobs because now we're fixing problems from the first one and can't move on to the next one. So none of that is delivering the level of service that we want to give our customers. We like to get jobs done on time and we like to keep everyone happy. But when we get in a bind, we have that tendency to like push that rush pressure, got to get it done, go, go, go kind of mentality down to the next person, right? Or over to the next person or up to the next person or whatever that is. We like to share it and we like to push it around to other people. And so now all of a sudden, it's not just me that's affected when it's a job that I sold or a job that I'm managing, but it's also it's also our fabrication team or our installers or other project managers who now their jobs are delayed, right? Because I'm occupying space in a calendar. And so, I mean, we just share it around with everybody. So again, we like to try to keep everyone happy. And that whole web weaves its way through all of us. So we got to move fast, but sometimes we have to slow down. I think a lot of times we have to slow down. There's a quote. I have no idea who said it, but it's a kind of one of those old timer quotes, right? And the saying goes, "Slow down. We're in a hurry." And I like that. I've used that a ton in my lifetime when trying to talk to other people about how they should slow down, right? But sometimes it just doesn't make its way into my brain when I need to slow down. But we got to slow down a little bit. We need to triple check those details and we need to make sure everything is there instead of assuming that the person that we're communicating with knows something that we know just magically through, the airwaves that connect our brains. Like We got to remember it don't work that way. So we have to make sure we communicate all those little details. They didn't do the takeoffs on the job, or they didn't do the submittals on the job, or they didn't meet with the customers and walk the job site, or whatever that is. Like, it may be the first time they're showing up out there, and we got to get them up to speed as quickly and as effectively as we can. And so that requires us slowing down and putting a little thought into there. Well, I could go on and on and on telling examples of times that we rushed and we missed things. And it happens. Again, we have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, we might do, I don't know, 500 jobs a year or something like that. And when you're doing all of these jobs, things get crossed up. You forget little details of specific jobs back and forth. Documenting that stuff is really important for me. Like, I have to figure out a system that works to document stuff for myself, because it might be a week or 2 or 3 or 6 between times when I look at a certain project, and I have to be able to look at that project and go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. That happened, and this is here and that's there." Otherwise, I forget it myself, right? I can't we can't keep up with all of that stuff at one time. So we've got to effectively have a system in place to document that stuff, whatever works for you, right? I think if you don't have one and you're trying to grow and you're trying to do more, like, coming up with the system or finding something that works is great. And always remember, when you have a system or you have a process or you have whatever in place, that joker can be changed quicker than you made it. The second time is always easier than the first time. So it actually would be changed quicker than it takes to make it the first time. So here at Memphis Fence, we don't really cut corners and we don't really cheat. I don't know if anybody'd sit in front of a camera and admit to that, but genuinely, like, we try our best not to cut corners. We try our best not to cheat. We're doing a job right now that has a requirement for domestic material. And we've got to set two 8 and 5/8 gate posts on it, right? Two domestic Schedule 40 8 and 5/8 gate posts. Well, those are takes some time to get those, right? And it's not like anybody just has them laying on their yard and say, "Here, yeah, I've got some." So we've got 8 or 10 pieces of 8 and 5/8 Schedule 40 pipe out here. A couple of them have India stamped in them. And then there's a handful of them that look like somebody took a grinder to various spots up and down that post and then touched it up with some cold Galf paint. And I don't know where they came from. I don't know when we got them, and I don't know how long they've been here. But I went out and looked at them, and I said, "Well, they don't say India, but there ain't no freaking way that I'm going to install that pipe on a job that has domestic requirements, get caught, and look like that moron." Well, I don't know. It didn't say nothing. Yeah, okay, sure, it didn't. But I mean, even I don't want to go down the path of them even questioning that, right? And so we ordered some new 8 and 5/8 pipe, and we had to wait. And the customer has called 26 times wanting to know when we're going to be there. And we just keep telling them we're waiting on material because we're not going to cut that corner. So when I say we really try not to cut corners and we really try not to cheat, I, we really do. And we don't do it intentionally. I told you a story a minute ago about a crew taking out galvanized pipe when it should have been black, right? So we weren't cutting corners and we weren't cheating. We made a mistake. And so we don't do it intentionally. We do rush and we do make mistakes and we do typically pay the price for those mistakes. So it happens to all of us. Well, in closing, I'll share a quote that I saw with you. There was a guy, and I don't know how to pronounce his name because I have no idea who he was until I looked it up. His name was John Wooden, Wooden, a basketball coach at UCLA. I don't really watch sports, sorry. So he was quoted as saying, "If you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over?" Right? And that's really great. So if you don't have time to do it the right way now, how much time is it going to take you to go out and do it over? Which is what's going to happen if you get caught cheating. You're either going to do it over or you're going to go and say, "Hey, would you take a discount for our mistakes?" Or, you're going to work some kind of deal out that's going to cost you something, time or money or both. So, yeah. Anyway, if you cheat and get caught, if you just do a rush job, right? You go out there and rush and you don't do it as well as you should, and they call you out on it, you're going to have to fix it. And sometimes it's just an honest mistake, right? We make honest mistakes and then we have to go out and we have to do it again. So slow down. We're in a hurry, is what I will leave you with. And with that, I appreciate you all tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.